From the KDLM studios in Detroit Lakes, it's Hodge Podge with Carol McCarthy, presented by Partnership for Health and now airing on TV3.
Back in the studio with Tara Getter from Pelican River Watershed District, Executive Director. Good morning, Tara.
Good morning, Carol.
I was going to say happy summer. We're in the middle of a resurgence of summer.
I love second summer. We did not get one last year, so I thought, oh my gosh, seems like we're on the same track again for this year. But no, here it is.
Yes, and so we're entering into the fall with lots of rain and lots of water, higher than normal precipitation, and we're going to talk a little bit about how that's affecting our area lakes and streams. Also, algal blooms that are happening in area lakes, and a project going on at Dunton Locks that you're involved with, and lots to talk about this morning.
It is. It's a busy fall.
Yeah, so let's talk about the rain. We've had a lot of kind of a soggy summer, actually. And that has turned into some high water levels in our area.
It has. So the lakes are above the normal. I usually like to see them a bit lower in the fall because that gives us some storage capacity in case we have a lot of snowfall during the year. We don't want to go into the fall with high water levels and then also be slammed with higher than normal precipitation of snowfall during the winter. So I get a little worried about this for folks. The good news is that we don't really have a lot of area flooding, so to speak. It's more of a nuisance for people trying to get their, docks in and out, and also with construction. I have more complaints with hearing about folks with the construction industry trying to finish their projects. I mean, I feel bad. And then the farmers. The weather really has affected our lakes in such a way where this last week, for instance, we had about 3/4 of an inch of rainfall in one day. And, water levels can rise real rapidly when we get that type of rainfall event. And as most folks know, at this time of year, most of our lakes have turned over. And by what we mean by that is that lakes usually stratify by temperature. So if you, for example, if you're swimming and you feel a nice little warm spot and you kind of put your feet down in the water and you feel it's colder temperature down there, that's the type of stratification that I'm talking about. So usually at the upper level, it'll be warm in our lakes, is that when you have that thermal difference, the bottom layer can lock in phosphorus. And when we either have a really bad storm where the winds kind of circulate that water, some lakes become unstratified, and all that phosphorus that's been just kind of accumulating in that lower, cooler level gets brought up to the surface, and you get an algal bloom. Well, this last week, we had a pretty major algal bloom on Detroit Lake was noted. It happened on the weekend, Sunday. We had a few phone calls at our office on Monday talking about it, that there was a pretty significant green slime along the West Lake Drive area in particular. Mm-hmm. So what happened was that we had the lakes were turning over. Remember, we had that cool snap here at the end of August. And when that happens, the lakes turn over, that cooler water gets brought to the surface along with the phosphorus. And then we had 80, degree days, just sweltering heat and so forth. And so the lake becomes biologically active, and that algae starts blooming and growing, and then it dies off and accumulates on the surface. And then we get a little slight wind, it blows into the shoreland area, and everybody goes, ooh. So that's what happened. I see it sometimes, and I've seen that phenomena happen on North Floyd Lake and Little Floyd Lake, but not to the degree on Detroit in many years. So again, it was, we can explain it scientifically, but people are like, oh, what's going on here? Again, wacky weather. Yeah. We talk about climate change. Some people go, oh, global warming. No, that's not the right word to use. Climate change. We're seeing drastic differences in weather patterns where hot, cold, rain, lots of rain, or drought. Mm-hmm. So depending upon, we're just really seeing some different weather patterns, which do affect our water quality.
All right. And so this high water level that we're at these days, I know that Dick Heacock, who is an advisor to the Pelican River Watershed District, released some information on data that he is watching about the high water level. We're at, 9 inches above?
It is.
Normal since the ice out, and it's maintained that all throughout the summer. But this is the reason why, and you are one of the agencies that permit for construction and you work with farmers as well. But this is why we have ordinances, right? That,
it is.
That there's a setback that people have to adhere to when they build, because you have that high water and you don't want stuff running off from the lawn or from fields into the lake or the rivers.
And to build resiliency on those shorelines. Many of our permits are wanting to modify the shoreline. And one of the reasons why they go, why do we need to get a permit from the watershed district? And really, this is an example of why. So we don't have people alter these shorelines in such a way where they can't be resilient to the fluctuations of the water levels. So that's another thing that's really important to us. When I think about high water levels, how else can that impact us? We have different types of watercraft now. We have these larger wakeboard boats or these surfing boats that create a wave behind the boat that you can surf behind. But that type of wave action is not the same as a normal, waves that we get from our environment. And it creates a much deeper wave, a very different type of, with the physics with it, it causes more erosion on our shoreline. And when you have high water levels and then you've got some of these boats creating these different types of waves, you can really do some shoreline damage within, an hour or two in a big hurry here. So those are the type of things also to watch for with the higher water levels.
All right. Tara Getter from Pelican River Watershed District, Executive Director of that agency, in the studio with us this morning, talking about the soggy year we're having here and how that affects our water quality. Moving on to some other things that you're working on, Tara, as well. There is a project going on at Dunton Locks that you've been involved with the county.
Yeah, the county's going to be removing this old concrete structure that was part of the Muskrat Lake that was used back in the DNR many moons ago. That's not used, I think, for more of a rearing pond and so forth. And it's kind of a crumbling structure. And fortunately, there was some Clean Water Legacy funds that the DNR was able to utilize to help assist with the cost share of removing that structure. And also, the Soil and Water Conservation District, Becker Soil and Water, is also involved with helping reestablish vegetation along this area, as well as along the little inlet area that goes into Lake Sally from Muskrat Lake. And so if you're walking on that little trail back in that nice little park area, as you head towards the south there, towards the Sioux Pass Ranch area, you'll notice this tiny little culvert in there, but that's all going to get removed. There'll be a nice little bridge crossing in there. And again, removing these old structures that really serve no purpose anymore and trying to put it back more to the natural conditions. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty exciting. So we're the county staff, there's staff that's helping with that, the Minnesota DNR, Becker Soil and Water, the Watershed District, another really good example of everybody kind of pooling their resources. We wrote for a Conservation Corp grant, so we're getting Conservation Corps members in there, 90% cost share to help with the project installation. And so, again, when everybody works together, it just shows that you can get projects done and at a very cost-effective way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's amazing because it is just a tiny little stretch, but it will make a big difference. And how long has that been in there? Has it been, decades, obviously, but
I want to say
since
the 1950s,
okay.
At least. It's an old structure.
Yeah, and it's coming apart and... Yeah, there's cement blocks floating down the street.
Time to take it out.
All right, so you'll see. And is that going to be that's going on right now?
No, it'll be it's slated for in October.
Okay.
Hopefully the weather, it stops raining long enough.
Right.
Forecast for the end of September, not so good, but hopefully we'll have a drier October.
All right. Tara Getter from Pelican River Watershed District in the studio with me this morning, and some of the other things going on. When we last spoke last month, you had a position opening up as Brent Elcott has flown the coop, so to speak, but you have some interviews going on, I understand, for his position.
Anybody, a shout out there. We still have, we will be accepting resumes and applications yet. We said to be eligible for the first round of interviews, we wanted in by yesterday, but hey, well, we will still take applications yet. So we have had some amazing applications, and I'm very excited. It's going to be really hard to pick only one person. I could hire like 3 off that list right now just by looking at some of their qualifications. But, we're looking for somebody who is a jack of all trades, because our office is small. I always say we're lean and mean. We none of us have just one job. We are all of us jack of all trades, and that person needs to be real flexible. It involves some data collection out in the field work, some meeting with landowners to review permits, being able to analyze data and write reports, make graphs, do some GIS mapping. There's no day is the same. So for a person who likes a lot of variety and has no problem with working on something different every day, this is the job for you.
All right. And of course, deals with interns, kind of gets that program set up.
Yes, there you go. They actually help us. They advertise for the interns this person will be, and they will bring interns in and then make the final selection. And then they will also oversee their activities during the summertime.
All right. So that position is open. And what is the actual title of that position again? It's
going to be Water Resource Coordinator.
Okay. All right. So there you have it. Tara Getter from Pelican River Watershed District in the studio with me this morning. And I should mention, too, I was just visiting with Tom Goulon from Detroit Lakes Parks and Rec, which you all also have somewhat of a partnership with, working with them and keeping the water quality at a certain level. We are at higher standards in Detroit Lakes, I understand, because we have a trout stream here in our midst in one of our parks, and we're just held to a higher standard, which is another reason why we're doing the wastewater treatment plant, redoing that too. But we've got to keep our phosphorus levels at a certain level, and I know that you've been very instrumental in working with other local agencies to do that.
Yeah, we work closely with other agencies because we don't, want to duplicate efforts, and it's just better when we have communication between everyone. And like, for instance, with Tom Goulon, we work with them. We have the stormwater program, and also the Watershed District is heavily involved in stormwater management. And so we work closely with the city regarding stormwater management, whether it's even their streets or buildings, and also with public coming in for permits. And this year, we're really excited. Connor Hagerud, a little shout out to him. He was one of our interns this summer, and he is also on the Concordia cross country team. And their team members of 40 students, or their team, they always do a community service project. And he came to me and he said, Tara, we always go to Park Rapids or these other areas. I really want to do something in the city of Detroit Lakes. I'm like, okay, let's make this happen. And so we also brought in Tom Glenn and goes, is there anything that with 40 students, a bigger project that we could do? So they did the storm drain stenciling. So if you see that, thank Concordia cross country team. Also, they did an amazing job working on the overlook. They did a lot of weed removal. That when I say weeds, we got great plants out there, but there was some invasives that we wanted to get rid of. And those students did an amazing job. They hauled piles and piles away. So what a wonderful, wonderful day of community service that those 40 team members did. So big shout out to Concordia today.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, it's good to see those kids in action too, and all the little projects that get done, and keeping our water clean. That's what it's all about. So we're heading into the fall, and next month, so it'll be October next month. Hopefully we'll get an update on the project out at Dunton Locks, and maybe heading into the winter season.
Yes.
Say that quietly. But I appreciate you coming in this morning, Tara.
Well, thank you. And let's enjoy the weather while we have it.
Now, back to Hodge Podge with Carol McCarthy on KDLM Detroit Lakes.
I'm back in the studio this morning with Ed Musilevich from Natural Resource Conservation Field Office here in Detroit Lakes. Also, Peter Mead from Becker Soil and Water Conservation District. Good morning.
Morning, Carol. Morning, Carol.
Some of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later. We'll talk about the aquatic invasive species inspection season that is, wrapping up for the season. Also, some of the projects you've been working on throughout the summer, and some tours coming up. And Ed, are you going to go first, talking about some of your program updates?
I can talk a little bit about our summary. Of course, the federal fiscal year ends September 30th. So I was just looking at some of the projects that we funded and everything. I'll give a little summary about what was brought into Becker County this year. Our Environmental Quality Incentives Program, which is kind of a program that provides funds for farmers to implement a plan. We funded 28 contracts. We had 57 contracts, actually, people applied. We funded 28 of them for about $850,000. Statewide, there was $27 million available in Minnesota, so we got quite a lion's share of that money. Projects that were funded mostly kind of piggybacking dollars with the SWCD with water and sediment control basins, some ag waste systems, just some other things like no-till, cover cropping, soil health type practices that we did. There were several of those that we have done. Some fencing and grazing systems too, a couple of those.
So Ed, just before you go on, how does that money come here? Do you have to submit grant applications every year?
Landowners actually apply for the program, and then we work with them on a conservation plan and take that conservation plan and rank it and score it, and then statewide they go through the scoring and fund them the highest to the lowest priority. So it's it's federal dollars that come to the state of Minnesota through the USDA to fund it.
Okay, so it's not like you get a pot of money and then you distribute it.
We do not. Okay. Everybody is competing statewide for that money. Okay. For that money.
All right.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. Some other projects that we funded actually. CRP, another general sign up. So we did actually look at all of those, and we had 25 applications that we were able to fund. I don't have the acres on that. That's still
and remind us what
on.
CRP means.
Conservation Reserve Program.
Okay.
So landowners can set their cropland areas aside for a 10 to 15 year time period. Plant conservation cover, native grasses, trees, and things like that. And then they receive cost share to do that, and then they receive annual payments through the life of the contract.
All right.
The other programs that we had, RCPP, which is our Regional Conservationist Program. We had 5 of those that were funded for $94,000, and that would be projects where producers are doing things to get certified under the Ag Certainty Program, which is a Minnesota Department of Agriculture program, where they look at their operation, the whole operation. And if they need to do some additional things, let's say cover crops or buffers or things like that to meet all of the water quality criteria for Ag Certainty, they can apply for funds to do that too.
Okay. All right. Ed Musilevich from the Natural Resource Conservation Field Office here in Detroit Lakes, giving us some of the statistics on the many projects they've worked on through the summer and heading into the fall. And I'm sure... when do folks apply for these programs? Is it now or throughout the winter?
They can apply at any time.
Oh, okay.
Anytime during the year. There's usually scoring periods, so there are deadlines where if you apply by a certain date, then we're able to rank and score you for $2020 or $2021.
Okay. All right.
Yes, and we are implementing a lot of the practices that we actually funded this summer. Mm-hmm. So. We have a lot of construction going on right now. A lot of construction that got done, surprisingly, with the wet weather.
I was going to say, were any of them delayed? Or
it has been a challenge and a muddy challenge too. So, but it actually has gone through. We were finishing up. I'm trying to think. There's 2 very large projects. One that was funded with the Soil and Water District, and then one that we've piggybacked for 15 water and sediment control basins and grade stabilization structures and stuff like that.
Well, has the summer also shown how putting projects to work, seeing how they work? I mean, do you ever have to go back and kind of tweak the project based on this wet weather that we've been having? And that's
right. And if it is actually cost shared with state dollars, Peter, maybe you just kind of chime in on that. There's certain time periods when they have to be field reviewed.
Okay.
So we do go back several times during the first 10 years to take a look at those projects.
All right.
Make sure they're working okay and making sure that everything is functioning properly.
Okay. So. Very good. Ed Musilevich from a Natural Resource Conservation Field Office. Also, Peter Mead from the Becker Soil and Water Conservation District are in the studio this morning and talking about some of the things they've been working on over the summer. So do you have a grand total of all the numbers that you gave me? I mean, I'm hearing millions of dollars.
Dollar-wise, under federal programs, and even the ones that I didn't mention, I'm just going to add it up right now. We're right at about $1.2 $2 million that have come into the county from federal sources, federal conservation sources.
Okay.
So it's
and you can near double that when you include the state sources as well.
Okay, I'm going to have you guys step up to the microphone.
You can nearly
closer.
double that too when you include the state sources and other partner dollars that we're able to leverage this way too.
Okay, very good. So continuing our conversation this morning with the guys from the Natural Resource Conservation Field Office and the Becker Soil and Water Conservation Office. And some of the other things that you've got going on, did you want to talk more, Peter, about your soil? Where do we want to start? Soil health tours?
Let's talk about the soil health tour.
Okay.
This summer, the end of July, actually, we were able to get 60 people together. So we got about 30 producers from all over the Red River Basin, this side of the river, as well as 30 conservation professionals from around the state. And we got on a bus. And we saw some stuff. Right away, we stopped in Holly at the Olson family farm and looked at their what they're doing as far as soil health goes, their shift to regenerative agriculture, including no-till on all their acres, I guess. From there, we went out to Jamestown and visited with Jeremy Wilson, who was last year's winner of the Leopold Award, a very outstanding honor in conservation and farming both. And looked at his entire operation, which had a lot of crop diversity, very reduced tillage, alternative cropping and alternative harvest methods. So everybody, whether you're a professional or a farmer, really took something away, I think, from the entire tour. We went out to Bismarck from there, spent some time at a variety of places. But the highlight for everybody was the Minokan farm out there. Our counterparts in Burleigh County out there have a demonstration farm, and I think everybody would have rather spent 2 more days out there really seeing everything that they've been doing for the past 15, 20 years as far as regenerative agriculture, alternative cropping, and everything related to soil health goes. So it was great. It was much more of a success, I think, than everybody anticipated. Nobody's real excited about spending 2.5, 3 days on a tour bus in the tail end of July, but it was great for all. And I think a lot of what we saw there is already, coming back to life here in Becker County in the coming growing season.
Okay. All right. Getting some more information from Peter Mead from Becker Soil and Water Conservation District, and some of the other things that you've been working on too. Your agency covers a lot of different areas. You work with egg producers and with farmers and egg producers in the area, but you also work with aquatic invasive species for our lakes and erosion control around our lakes. So you cover, no pun intended, a lot of ground.
This is true. And all things soil and water, I guess. On the AIS front, another outstanding year, I guess. We'll be right about at 24,000 inspections for the year.
Wow.
As we wrap up. We were at 23,300 or so here a week or two ago. And we've had nearly 300 decontaminations with our hot water decontamination units. One employee who's been with us for a number of seasons now, Joe Vaz, actually performed more decontaminations than any other inspector in the state of Minnesota.
Wow.
And he was working solely at the Detroit South Access. So that shows you really the volume that we get through there and just the breadth of their efforts.
Right. Now, I know that we've had the coordinator for AIS on a couple of times, and there was talk that there might be a closure of one of the accesses on Detroit Lake. I'm thinking about the one on by Rossman Avenue. Is that the one that they were looking at closing possibly, or, kind of looking at the traffic through there and maybe coming up with ideas because Westlake Drive is going to be revamped in the coming years? Right.
There have definitely been some discussions on that. Another one that will be, I guess, essentially disappearing but also being replaced is over by the Holiday Inn.
Right.
Where the DNR will have a new access that'll have like 25 parking spaces, be much more accommodating, I think, and be much more effective for us to be there too. And then they'll be abandoning the one that exists on the other side currently. Okay. But I think the discussions on the Rossman access are ongoing, but it sure is a tricky spot for folks coming in. It seemed
even more so this year, but maybe I was just looking at it extra closely because Carl had mentioned that, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would be but do we ever employ the dogs? I know that's through the DNR, but do we ever have the dogs come in and inspect watercraft?
We haven't. I definitely heard stories around the state where they've done that, and they seem to be quite effective.
Right, yeah. So, all right, so that continues the program. How many years have we been doing this now?
I believe this is year 5. since
Okay,
we
it
took
goes
over
pretty
the program.
quick. Okay. All right. So, and we've got a 10-year dedicated funding for the program. So we got 5 more years under the dedicated funding.
Yes, and hopefully
Okay.
we see that continue.
All right. Peter Mead from Becker Soil and Water Conservation District talking about the aquatic invasive species inspection season. Do we still have some inspections going on now as far as long as we have open water?
Yep, there are a few. Our inspectors are limited to working 67 days as temporary employees for the county. So obviously, a lot of folks burned up their days. A lot of folks have returned to school, be it as a teacher or a student.
Right.
We do have a handful still at kind of more trafficked spots. And Carl's been on weekends, such as last weekend there was a fishing tournament on Cormorant to make sure that folks coming in and out are taking care of things as they need to.
Mm-hmm. So where do they see most of the people that are kind of suspect bringing, or they find maybe aquatic invasive species on them, like zebra mussels? Are they coming from North Dakota, from the Red River area, or are they coming from just other sites?
Our violation rates are fortunately really low.
Okay.
We tend to see it a lot in lake-to-lake traffic sometimes. Don't think of it. Some of the violations that we log are actually boats that were removed for the winter and they're brought back without having been cleaned. Obviously, they've overwintered, so those species aren't necessarily a threat, but it's still not in compliance with the laws surrounding AIS.
Okay. How about starry stonewort? That we're still keeping that at bay?
We are, fortunately. It is, there are a few spots not all that far away from Becker County where it is, but Carl's very in tune to it and been, educated in its identification too, so keeping a watchful eye. As you mentioned, Carl's been around to most of the boat accesses in Becker County doing monitoring this year, looking at all the species present, making sure nothing that we don't know is there is turning up. And we've enlisted some professional help too to actually do scuba dives and gridded sampling at our really high traffic boat access.
All right. We're going to continue switching gears a little bit here. Talk about some of the erosion control projects you've had done throughout the season.
Sure. Well, as Ed mentioned, it was a pretty busy year. We've actually averaged over the last 10 years or so, we average about 50 water and sediment control basins, so kind of large-scale structural erosion control projects. This year, if we get them all in, which we're determined to, we mentioned the mud, the elements, but we've been going all through the season, in standing crops, whatever we can do to get these all done. We'll have 104 done this year.
Wow.
And that's not slowing down for next year. We got a lot of survey and investigation and evaluation going on right now for potential projects for next year as well.
Okay. All right. We've got a few minutes left, and I wanted to touch base on the climate change in the news because this is Climate Week here in Minnesota and across the nation.
It is. And you can stop on in our office and pick up a sticker. It says, I didn't hear your question, but the answer is soil health. And it's not the answer, but it is part of the equation here. So a really big emphasis for us, I think, in the past 4 years has been soil health, which a lot of people just think that means cover crops. Well, it's about a lot more than that. It's about, shifting from our conventional system of effectively exporting all our carbon and all our nutrients and shifting to something regenerative by employing the 5 principles of soil health, if I can plug them off real quick.
Right.
Armoring the soil, so making sure that there's cover there, whether that's residue, whether that's plant growth, so that when raindrops impact that soil, we don't start erosion from the go, right? Minimizing disturbance, so reducing tillage, where possible, or not tilling to limit the amount that you're turning over and disturbing the soil. Plant diversity, so growing more than 2 crops, more than 1 crop for a variety of reasons, but mostly to build soil health and sequester as much carbon as possible. Keeping living roots through most of the growing season as much as possible, and that's where cover crops really come into play. And then incorporating livestock where possible. So you get cows on the land effectively to regenerate or leave as much as they can back on the land as those crops and cover crops get utilized.
All right. Peter Mead from Becker Soil and Water Conservation District and Ed Misulevich from the Natural Resource Conservation Field Office here in Detroit Lakes. I know we've just got seconds left here, but I also wanted to touch base. I've heard about a pollinator program that we've had at $900,000 the state of Minnesota, the legislature has designated to help pollinators out. Are you, when that comes or if that comes, well, it's going to come, but are you the ones that will be distributing the funds to area
think the SWCDs it's more of a metro thing.
Okay.
Peter was mentioning a little bit earlier before we started, but we certainly do have federal programs that are available for people who want to establish pollinator habitat. Just regular cost share programs. The Conservation Reserve Program has a pollinator species practice that can be put in. And really, every buffer that goes around the lake, everything that the district is working on on lakeshore buffers, that's pollinator habitat. That's getting that diversity out there and trying to little bites at a time certainly are helping and will help.
All right, Ed and Peter, thank you so much.